So, Vanessa, let's come to you then. And of course, Trump has been in Saudi Arabia. So, what has he been up to?
Well, apparently Trump has been arranging to meet with Jolani, the head of the Syrian junta, which of course is basically al-Qaeda that came to power after the international coup of December 2024. I don't know if the slides are a bit mixed up because this one is a little bit further on, but I'll just keep going. So this is basically the first meeting of a US president with a Syrian president in 25 years. Of course, unfortunately, this is a meeting with the leader of al-Qaeda. And we hear, of course, that Trump has had the meeting this morning in Saudi Arabia before he headed off to Qatar. And this is basically following a meeting in Damascus between a Trump, let's say, one of the Trump management, Jonathan Bass, who was reported by Syrian media to have gone to Damascus to meet with Jolani in order to lay the ground for the meeting with Trump. Jonathan Bass is someone who, on his X account, talks about respect for religious freedom and coexistence, without, of course, mentioning the fact that Israel itself has no respect for the coexistence with Palestinians and is currently genociding Palestinians in the occupied territories and in Gaza. Now, as a result of Bass's meeting, apparently Jolani basically agreed to give America access to oil reserves in Syria and to further and expand trade with the United States, which of course means occupation by the likes of the International Monetary Fund and overall control by the US and Israel of the Syrian economy going forward. He also promised Trump a Trump Tower to be built in the middle of Damascus. So all of these sweeteners were basically to give him the opportunity to meet with Trump. And that, in fact, led to Trump lifting the sanctions on al-Qaeda, which had been in place, or the sanctions rather, had been in place since 1979 onwards. So let's just listen to Trump addressing the Gulf states regarding the lifting of sanctions on Syria.
And also with President Erdogan of Turkey, who called me the other day and asked for a very similar thing, among others, and friends of mine, people that I have a lot of respect for in the Middle East. I will be ordering the cessation of sanctions against Syria in order to give them a chance at greatness. Oh, what I do for the Crown Prince.
But of course, part of this deal was effectively the normalization between Syria and, or normalization of relations between Syria and Israel, which apparently has been achieved. And Trump is not lifting all the sanctions. I'm told by sources in Syria that around 30% have actually been lifted. So this seems to be a bit more of a gesture than anything else. And I don't know if we can go back to the slide from Marwa, because she basically went on her Telegram channel to talk about what has not been affected basically by Trump's grand gesture in front of Saudi Arabia in particular. And I very much paraphrased what she said. But basically, it doesn't mean an end to US illegal occupation of Syrian resources. either directly or by proxy. No end to Israeli aggression against Syria, the bombing of multiple sites across Syria since December 2024. No reversal of the Turkish theft of Aleppo industry, which began in 2011. No trade without US or Israeli approval. And of course, basically the embedding of US and EU and UK banking facilities in Syria to ensure future control. No military or defense, much of which was destroyed by Israel from December last year onwards. No unity of the Syrian minorities because we're heading towards partitioning. No end, of course, to the ethnic cleansing by, I'm sorry, I think that's typo correction in the system, by Jolani's gangs, because of course what they're effectively doing is normalizing al-Qaeda as a leadership for Syria, and effectively also normalizing the ethnic cleansing programs that have been carried out by the forces under the control of Jolani. And in fact, of course, what did Trump get from Saudi Arabia in return? The biggest arms deal in history, dozens of US defense companies, so-called defense companies, providing 142 billion arms package, also reported to probably expand beyond that, including air and missile defense, air force capability, space advancement, and maritime security. And of course, we have to bear in mind that none of that would be done unless Saudi Arabia had agreed to normalize with Israel, because Israel would not allow Saudi Arabia to develop any kind of offense or serious defense capability unless it was approved by Israel and to Israel's advantage. And looking at the fact that maritime security is part of the deal, of course, that would also impact on Iran. And if we remember what Jonathan Bass also said, that he agreed with Jolani that there would be cooperation between Jolani, Syria, and the US to basically go against Iran in the future. This is all while, of course, the US is allegedly conducting negotiations with Iran. And then finally, the video shows Trump talking about the sanctions that he's very recently imposed upon Iran. So let's have a look at that.
I want to make a deal with Iran. I want to do something if it's possible. But for that to happen, it must stop sponsoring terror, halt its bloody proxy wars, and permanently and verifiably cease its pursuit of nuclear weapons. They cannot have a nuclear weapon. I don't imagine there's anybody at this table or anybody in this room that would say they can. I'm strongly urging all nations to join us in fully and totally enforcing the sanctions that I just placed on Iran, and we also place secondary sanctions, which are in certain ways even more devastating.
So secondary devastating sanctions. And as I said, all this literally a couple of days after the negotiations in Oman between Stephen Witkoff and the Iranian representatives.
Thank you for that, Vanessa.